First of all, I've talked about this, and I want to let you know that, number one, I was educated back when they educated and not indoctrinated. And I am not an educator by trade. I'm retired Air Force, did 28 years in the military, in the Air Force, and retired in 2008, and we all know what's been going on since then. But I heard about Common Core the first time a few years ago, and back when it was being pushed onto the states. And I started educating myself because I was taught how to research and make decisions and think rather than being told what to think. So yes, I'm not an educator. I have a lot of people ask me about that, but I do know of what I speak. I too am running for school board. I'm running for school board District 3 over in Santa Rosa County. I figured that I've been screaming about this long enough that it was time to finally put my self where, put my money where my mouth was. So I am walking the walk, walking the talk. First of all, Common Core is nothing new. You're going to be surprised, but Common Core goes back under a different title all the way back into the late 1800s. It was actually thought about by a gentleman by the name of John Dewey. John Dewey was a Marxist. John Dewey felt that the school systems needed to be training centers to produce workers for the collective. He had a number of people that followed in line with him and named him the father of progressive education reform, or the father of progressive education. He, like I said, had followers, and those people were the ones who helped develop programs over the years. And what they would do, the progressive reformers, what they would do is they'd show where there was a problem, where something needed to be fixed. They'd raise an issue, and then they'd come through with a solution, and that solution would then be put into place, but it wouldn't fix the problem. It would just extenuate things and make things worse. The purpose behind Common Core, why would they want to go back, all these years? By the way, one of the first real names of what is now called Common Core was called outcome-based education. Outcome-based education was implemented in earnest back in the late 70s into the 80s. And what they have decided over the years is that, they'll implement it, and then when they get the pushback, they'll pull back and they'll say, okay, we'll wait until the next opportune time and we'll reintroduce it. And each time they reintroduce it, they give it a new name and they get it implemented a little bit broader and deeper, and people, become less and less concerned as the time goes on. Things that it's been called over the years is mastery learning, Goals 2000, School to Work, No Child Left Behind, and now Common Core. The purpose behind it. The purpose is really kind of scary. And there are quotes that go back, but primarily what we have is a Dr. Spady who voiced this purpose behind it, the hidden agenda. Now, he was involved in the education system back in the 70s, and in 1982 he was speaking at a conference, and he talked about what the four functions, two of the four functions of mastery learning. Now, remember, mastery learning was just another name, precursor to Common Core. Here is the hidden agenda that they had to this. A system of supervision and control which restrains behavior of kids. The outcome of the hidden agenda should be the fostering of social responsibility and compliance. The purpose for this is not to educate our children. It is not to develop more rigorous and demanding standards. It is to actually get our kids indoctrinated and become better workers for the collective. So, why do we want to stop it? Well, we want to stop it because as it's being implemented today, it is discouraging our children completely from wanting to be educated. They want to stay home from school. They no longer want to read because the things that they're being given to read are not interesting. The math problems, you gave one of them, the gentleman in the video earlier on had one, and the bottom line to it was, the math problems are taking the children up to 3 and 4 hours a night in homework to complete. They're sitting at the table in tears. Their parents are in tears trying to help them because they don't know what's going on with this. They don't understand that, they're having to break the numbers down into tens or into single digits. There's some of them that they break them down into symbols. 100 is a rectangle. Tens are zeros or circles, and ones are dashes. And you break these numbers completely down. There's a video of a young lady doing this very thing, and it takes her 8 minutes to complete an assignment, a math problem, not an assignment, one math problem, and she comes up with the wrong answer. Now here is the problem. Right here in Florida, in Pasco County, a mother put online a sample of a math test that her daughter took. Her daughter was graded a 96. She missed one question. The question she accomplished correctly. She did the math and came up with the correct answer, but she was marked down on that question because she did not show the proper work as to how she came up to that solution. She didn't break the number down. So we are discouraging our children from wanting to learn. And they don't want our children to learn. They want our children to be trained to be unquestioning workers for the collective. They are also presenting things to our children much earlier than their brains are developed to handle. They are now turning kindergarten into first grade, and they're turning preschool into kindergarten. I just had a gentleman tell me that his grandchild is now not allowed naps in kindergarten. And they wonder why they're cranky and misbehaving in school. Again, it's getting down to that behavior modification to turn out the compliant individual. I was asked a couple of weeks ago by a friend, her great-granddaughter is down in Alachua County, thank you. And she said she's struggling with math. She doesn't understand it, and would I please review the math book to see if it's a Common Core issue or if it's an issue with her granddaughter or great-granddaughter, what was going on. And so I did that, and I looked through it, and basically what I found is, yes, what they do with the addition or the math problems in the book. Now, this is a 7th grade, this is a middle school math book. And what they do is they make the problems so convoluted, they make them so complex that the kids are just confused as all get-outs, and they can't even figure out what the answers are supposed to be. But this just shows you right here. This is one you can come up in a little while and take a look at. I've got some others up there. But this is a math problem that is teaching fairness. And it tells the children right in the math problem whether, they do the comparison on the 3 scenarios, and if the comparison is equal, it is fair. And if the comparison is unequal, it is unfair. And the children have no leeway. They are told exactly what's fair and unfair. This is what we're doing to indoctrinate our children, and we've got to stop this. This needs to be stopped. The other thing was, and you can look at it over there, that was the online version. And while I was looking at it online, there were ads going on the left-hand side of the page. Now, this is the student section of the math online math book. And there were ads running that were inappropriate for that age group. And why are we running ads to start with? So take a look over there at what's on the math books when we're done. I took those, this one as well as the other 3, to the state school board meeting down in Orlando 2 weeks ago, 2.5 weeks ago, the one that you saw in the video. We had a number of concerned citizens, parents, grandparents, teachers, administrators that were there that were all speaking out against Common Core. We had nearly 100 people getting up and speaking to the school board. I presented these slides, these charts that I had. I showed them to the school board, the state school board, Pam Stewart and Gary Chartrand. And I was given 2 minutes to speak, having driven 7 hours instead of the 3 that everyone was expecting. So I got my words in and stormed off, as you saw, and sat down. On the break, I took these up to the front, and I asked to show them closer. I asked Pam Stewart and Gary Chartrand if I could approach them and let them see those closer. Their response to me was it wasn't their responsibility, and then they proceeded to turn their backs on me. Because, number one, the state school board reviews all the textbooks, and then, or not the school board, but the Department of Education reviews the textbooks and then provides a list of textbooks for the districts to choose. And they happened to not purchase the online version of this textbook. They didn't know that at the time I approached them, but because they consider the textbooks curriculum and that doesn't fall into their responsibility, it falls into the school district's responsibilities. So it wasn't their problem. I told them it was their problem because they approved that textbook, number one, and number two, they're pushing to digitize or to make our classrooms all electronic. If we are going to have our school books with ads, inappropriate ads on the side of the page where they're doing their homework, that is not acceptable. So, the meeting in Orlando, almost 100 of us spoke. Only one of the school board members even acknowledged any of the comments that we made. They took the vote and passed unanimously to put into effect Common Core, now called the Florida Standard. Again, Saul Alinsky, every time you know that something is, people get wind of what it really is, you rename it. So they haven't changed it. As a matter of fact, the Common Core, now Florida Standard, was so bad that one of the votes that they, the vote that they did actually was to accept some clarifications to the standard because the standard wasn't good enough. So why are we accepting the standard number one, but then we have to make changes to the standard to make it right? And they can't actually make changes. They had to make clarifications because the standard is copyrighted by the National Governors Association and the CCSSO. So we have 85% that must be implemented in the curriculum, and 15% is left up to the up to the states to add, subtract, the school districts to do the same. And those aren't tested, by the way. Only the 85% is tested. So they accepted that. The things that they had to add back in: cursive, measurements, money for elementary, and calculus for high school. So these are more rigorous and more demanding standards of what we already had. By the way, Fordham Institute did a study of the standards by state to compare the state standards against the Common Core standards. And for the greatest majority, they were either equal to or better than the Common Core standard. Here in Florida, we were slightly better in math slightly better in math and slightly worse in the English language arts. So, go to the state school board and they don't listen to us. What can we do about it? Absolutely nothing. The state school board, as well as the Commissioner of Education, are appointed positions. We do nothing to hire them and can do nothing to fire them. The day that we spoke out, they looked at us like we were just a little rock in their shoe because they know there's nothing we can do. We have to get those positions changed to elected positions so that the people have a say on what's going on. How am I doing on time? They are appointed by the governor.
Can I say one thing?
Yes.
It used to be in Florida that the Education Commission was elected.
Yes.
But Governor Bush had that change. Because now they all work for the executive branch.
Absolutely. Now, the other thing that happened at that meeting was Pam Stewart, our Commissioner of Education, number 4 under Rick Scott. He can't seem to get it right, and he still hasn't gotten it right, because she completely supports Common Core Standard, as does the rest of the school board. By the way, Gary Chartrand is not an educator, he's a businessman, and he is the chairman of the State Board of Education. She is right now looking at the assessment, and she is making a decision this month, in the month of March. She has had a recommendation handed to her as to the form of assessment that that she should go with, but she doesn't have to select what she's been, what's been proposed to her. There is a group within the state school, the Department of Education. They're the procurement team, and they're the ones that have reviewed 5 different proposals. They are proposals because there will be a contract written for this assessment. It's all business, guys. We're talking money. Follow the money with all of this. Jeb Bush got $1 million from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill and Melinda Gates have spent nearly $1 billion. Well, no, I don't think it's quite that much. The last I saw it was near $500 million that they have spent out of their foundation in their own pockets to push Common Core. Why? Because they will make money off of this. No question. So anyway, the one out of the 5 that's been recommended is called the AIR test, AIR. And the reason why they're pushing it is because the Pearson test that was proposed, and they're the ones that have been doing the FCAT all along, would need to be field tested, but the AIR test would not need to be field tested. There are problems with all of this. Number one, we need to stop doing standardized testing on our children. Flat out needs to be stopped. There is no question that what happens, and since we've started doing this, what happens with the standardized testing is time is taken away from educating our children and testing our children and teaching to the test. And the reason why you find the tests are being taught to is there is a direct link to teacher merit pay and teacher retention as to the results of the student testing, the assessments. And so they're spending way too much time on the standardized tests, and they need to quit that completely and get back to educating. So Pam Stewart is the sole, the one and only, the appointed Pam Stewart, the one we have no influence over and have no say whether she's hired or fired, is the one and only person in the state of Florida that is making the decision on the assessment test for the Common Core. So here we are. What's going on? Right now we have bill on top of bill on top of bill over in Tallahassee. As far as education is concerned, we've got a couple that are going to stop the data mining, or at least not stop it, but control it. But we have 2 bills, they're companion bills. One is House Bill 25, the other is Senate Bill 1316. Senate Bill 1316 was introduced by Senator Greg Evers, and the House Bill 25 was submitted by Mayfield and has been co-introduced by Broxson. And what it is it's basically a pause bill for the implementation of Common Core. It will stop the implementation of Common Core, Florida standards, in its tracks until certain actions have been completed. And what it does is basically says you will have to, they'll have to have typically town hall meetings in all of the congressional districts where at least one member of the state school board will be present so that they can get feedback from the citizenship as to the Common Core. And it also will require a funding, you know, what it's actually going to cost. It will require that study be done on it. And until they see what the full impact is going to be, then they would hold this up completely and do that, and then make a determination on its continuation after that fact. The thing with the pause bill is it's not perfect, but at least it does stop things for the time being. My concern is, what are we going to do for those grades where it's already been implemented? We have children in the kindergarten, first and second grade that you know, have no clue as to how to do things the normal way. But we do need to follow these bills. Currently, right now, I'm told by a friend of mine who went at opening day to Tallahassee for the legislature, that she spoke both with Speaker, help me out, my brain's dead, Weatherford, as well as Senate President Gaetz. And both of them are against House Bill 25 and Senate Bill 1316. They support Jeb Bush. He is a hurdle that we have to fight here in Florida because he pushes Common Core. His foundation pushes Common Core, and everybody, you know, looks at him as being, you know, the great governor, and so he wouldn't do anything that would harm our kids. So we must go along with what he has to say. So people are in line with what Jeb Bush is pushing and thus are not putting our children first. And that's where we have to get. So make sure you're calling Rick Scott's office. Weatherford's office. Why is his brain, or my brain, just escaping me on his name right now? And then Gaetz. Yeah, I tell you. So we need to follow up, call them daily while we're in the legislature right now, while we're in session. Make sure that you're calling them daily so that they will allow those to get on the agenda and get to the floors for a vote. And I think I know what Gay's going to be talking about, maybe the resolutions. Is that correct? So I'm not going to steal her thunder. There are some really good things that have come about out of the Florida Republican Party. So, and Gay's going to talk to those. And I'll wait and take questions because I know we're really going, you know, we need to get closer. But here's what I recommend everyone do. How were you educated? You were educated before standardized testing, correct? No. You were educated. Oh, you got standardized testing?
I got standardized testing.
Yeah, I never did. But most people didn't have standardized testing. The first standardized test I ever took was the SAT and the ACT before I went to college. That was it. You know, we had tests that, you know, confirmed whether we learned what we were taught during the year, but we were never provided standardized tests. We need to do away with standardized testing. We need to do away with Common Core, and what we need to get back to is American classical curriculum. It's what fueled an American industrial revolution, and it's what put man on the moon. There was never anything wrong with it. We were top in the world when it came to our education of our children. We are now down in the 20s. We need to stop what's going on. We need to get our control of our schools and our children back.